When a white police officer pulled over a black woman for no clear reason, he expected her to be intimidated. What he didn't know was that she was a highly respected judge, and the events that followed would turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. If you were stopped by a police officer for no reason, what would you do? Stay silent or speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know how you'd handle it. It was late on a Thursday evening when Judge Vanessa Carter finished a long day in court. She had presided over 3 difficult cases back to back and was looking forward to nothing more than a quiet dinner and an early night. The streets were nearly empty as she drove her sleek black sedan through the quiet neighborhoods of her city. Out of nowhere, flashing red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror. Confused, Vanessa checked her speed. She was well under the limit. She signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. A tall, white police officer approached her window with a hard expression. "License and registration," he said curtly, not even offering a greeting. Vanessa rolled down her window and handed over her documents. "Officer, may I ask what I've done wrong?" she said calmly. The officer smirked. "We've had reports of suspicious vehicles in the area, and you match the description." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "What description would that be?" He looked her up and down, then shrugged. "A black driver in an expensive car." Her stomach tightened, but she kept her tone steady. Years of commanding a courtroom had taught her how to mask her emotions. "That's quite a vague description, officer." He leaned closer. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Vanessa's mind raced. She knew her rights. She also knew the danger of confrontation in situations like this. Slowly, she reached for her phone, pressing the record button before complying. The cool night air hit her as she stepped onto the sidewalk. The officer began questioning her aggressively about where she was coming from and why she was in this neighborhood. "I work here," she said simply. "Doing what?" he demanded. Vanessa met his gaze, a hint of steel in her eyes. "I'm a judge at the county courthouse." The officer blinked, clearly caught off guard. But instead of backing down, his tone grew sharper, a choice he would soon regret. The officer's expression hardened. "Judge, huh? That's a good one," he said with a mocking tone. "Got any proof of that?" Vanessa kept her hands visible and her voice calm. "Yes, there's an identification card in my purse, inside the vehicle. I can get it if you allow me." The officer hesitated, then shook his head. "Stay right where you are. I'll get it myself." He opened the car door and rummaged through her purse without asking for consent. Vanessa knew this was a violation, but she also knew speaking up too soon might escalate things. Finally, he pulled out her official judicial ID card and studied it. For a brief moment, his smugness faltered. But instead of apologizing, he said, "Even judges have to follow the law." Vanessa tilted her head slightly, and so do police officers. That single sentence seemed to set him off. His voice rose as he accused her of being uncooperative, suggesting she might be hiding something illegal in her vehicle. "Officer," Vanessa said evenly, "you've detained me without probable cause. You've searched my personal belongings without my consent, and you've made comments that could be interpreted as racial profiling. I strongly suggest you reconsider your approach." Her calm but firm tone seemed to unnerve him. He stepped back slightly, glancing toward his patrol car. For a moment, Vanessa thought he might just walk away. But instead, he radioed for backup. As the minutes passed, Vanessa stood under the flashing lights, the recording on her phone capturing every word, every action. When the second patrol car arrived, the new officer, a younger man, looked at her with surprise. "Judge Carter," he asked, recognizing her instantly. The first officer froze, realizing too late who he had been dealing with. The younger officer whispered something in his ear, and his posture changed from confrontational to uneasy. Vanessa knew this was her moment, not to lash out, but to ensure the law was respected. What happened next would decide whether this was just another bad traffic stop or a case that would make headlines. Subscribe to the Celeb Scene and hit the bell icon so you never miss powerful, real-life stories that will leave you speechless. The younger officer stepped forward respectfully. "Judge Carter, I'm Officer Daniels. Is everything all right here?" Vanessa gave him a measured look. "Not exactly. I've been detained without cause, had my personal property searched without consent, and been subjected to comments that suggest racial profiling. All of this," she gestured toward her phone, "is on record." Daniel's face tightened. He turned to the older officer. "Is this true?" "She's exaggerating," the first officer muttered, avoiding eye contact. Vanessa calmly addressed Daniels. "I know my rights, and I also know my responsibilities as a judge. But right now, I'm speaking to you as a citizen who expects equal treatment under the law." Daniels nodded slowly. "Understood, ma'am. Would you like to file a formal complaint?" "Yes," Vanessa replied firmly. "But not here. I'll handle it through the proper channels after I ensure this stop is officially documented." Daniels immediately began filling out the necessary forms, while the first officer shifted uncomfortably. The air between them was thick with tension. As the paperwork was completed, Vanessa asked for both officers' badge numbers, which Daniels provided without hesitation. The older officer hesitated, but ultimately complied. "You're free to go, ma'am," Daniels said, stepping back. Vanessa didn't move immediately. Instead, she looked directly at the first officer. "One day, officer, you may learn that power is not about intimidation. It's about responsibility. I hope, for the sake of the people you serve, that day comes soon." Without waiting for a response, she got back into her car and drove away, the flashing lights fading in her rearview mirror. But Vanessa wasn't done. She knew this was bigger than one traffic stop. This was about accountability. And as a judge, she had the means to make sure the system faced its own reflection in the mirror. What she didn't know was that the incident would soon go viral, changing not only the officer's career, but also sparking a conversation that would reach far beyond the city limits. The next morning, Vanessa filed an official complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. She included her video recording, a written statement, and copies of the incident report she had obtained from Officer Daniels. Normally, such cases would take weeks, sometimes months, to gain traction. But by noon that same day, a local news outlet had obtained a leaked copy of her video. Within hours, it was on every major social media platform. The footage was damning. Viewers saw the officer dismissing her questions, rifling through her purse without permission, and making the black driver in an expensive car comment. The internet exploded with outrage. Hashtags calling for justice trended nationwide. The police chief held an emergency press conference, announcing that the officer in question had been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Vanessa's phone didn't stop ringing. Civil rights organizations wanted her to speak at rallies. News anchors requested interviews. Even other judges reached out privately to express their support and to share their own troubling encounters with law enforcement. That evening, Vanessa sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea while scrolling through hundreds of messages from strangers. Many were words of encouragement. Others were heartbreaking stories from people who had endured similar treatment but never had proof. The overwhelming response made something clear. This wasn't just her fight. It was an opportunity to shed light on a problem that too many people faced in silence. Still, Vanessa felt the weight of the moment. She knew the officer's career might be over, and part of her wondered if that was justice or revenge. But then she remembered the fear and anger she had felt during the stop and the countless others who had felt the same without anyone believing them. Vanessa made a decision. She would testify before the city council and advocate for mandatory body cameras on all officers, a change that could protect both citizens and police. The viral video had started the conversation. Now, she intended to make sure it didn't fade away. 2 weeks later, the city council chamber was packed. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters whispered into microphones, and every seat in the public gallery was filled. At the front, Judge Vanessa Carter stood behind a wooden podium, prepared to speak not as a judge, but as a citizen seeking change. "What happened to me," she began, "wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an abuse of authority rooted in prejudice. And it could have happened to anyone who looks like me. That is why I am here, not for personal vindication, but for reform." She detailed her experience, carefully citing the violations of her rights and explaining how the encounter could have escalated dangerously had she not been in a position of authority. Her voice never wavered, but her words carried the weight of every person who had ever felt powerless during a traffic stop. The council listened intently when she proposed mandatory body cameras for all officers, coupled with strict disciplinary measures for those who failed to use them. Murmurs of approval filled the room. Outside, supporters gathered with signs reading "Justice for All" and "Accountability Now." The press covered every moment, ensuring her message reached far beyond City Hall. Within a month, the council voted unanimously to approve the body camera policy. The decision made headlines nationwide, with many cities citing Vanessa's case as inspiration for their own reforms. As for the officer who had pulled her over, the internal investigation concluded with his dismissal from the force. Vanessa felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that he would no longer have the power to harm others. That evening, Vanessa drove home past the same quiet streets where the incident had begun. The flashing lights were gone, but their memory lingered. This time, though it wasn't a source of fear, it was a reminder that one person's courage can spark change. And as she pulled into her driveway, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a movement,